Hello and welcome to the Everything's Black Mike podcast with me, Aaron Stokes, as we bring you a little bit of an unexpected and special episode after we spoke to Eddie Howe this morning at Newcastle United's training base. It's the first time that we've spoken to Eddie since he came out of hospital, since he returned to action earlier this week. And I must say he is looking very, very good for a man who just around 12 to 13 days ago was diagnosed with pneumonia and sent to hospital. He's back now. He's been back in training for the last couple of days. He spoke to us this morning at Benton for the Friday morning press conference, and he will lead the team out not only against Ipswich on Saturday, but until the end of the season. This despite the fact that Eddie Howe admits to us that he's not feeling 100%. He said that as his very first answer. He said he's not feeling 100% physically, but he does insist that mentally he's almost back to full capacity, and he believes that he is in good shape to lead Newcastle United into the final 5 games of the season as they try and get a top 5 finish. So I thought it would be good to just bring you an episode today discussing what we spoke about with Eddie Howe. As you can imagine, the press conference was absolutely dominated with questions about his health, his recovery, obviously Jason Tindall's time at the club, how much control or say he sort of had as he was watching on from home. Some really, really intriguing answers from Eddie Howe, who went into a lot of detail. He didn't shirk any questions about his recovery. And it was just really, really interesting to hear what he's been through. It was also very, very good to see Eddie Howe back at Benton. The place hasn't been the same without him, as much as Jason Tindall's done a fantastic job. And we've enjoyed speaking to him on a Friday morning. It was very, very good to see Howe not only back, but as I say, looking well, looking positive. And as I say, not looking like a man who just about a week or so ago was in hospital receiving some very, very good treatment from the NHS. We'll dive into some of the quotes Eddie Howe gave us this morning as he spoke to us. It's worth sort of giving you the full answer to sort of what his first response was. I've just sort of touched on it there, him saying he's not 100% in his body. But obviously, actually, the first question of the press conference was just that. How is he feeling? How are you doing? And he responded, I'm okay. I'm not 100% in body, but I like to think I'm very close to 100% in my mind, which is the most important thing. I'm well enough to face you guys today, which he might not be too happy about. He went on to say, I try to take a positive from every experience. I think that's really important that you try and do that. But this has been a real challenge because your health you take for granted, and I certainly have. When you don't have the luxury of feeling normal, it can be very difficult. So it's certainly been a very range of emotions. Thankfully, I'm on the road to recovery, which is the most important thing. I'm delighted to be here. Now, that was sort of a running, recurring theme of the press conference. Eddie Howe being asked sort of, has it changed your sort of outlook on your health, how much you work? You know, we all know how much of a workaholic he is. He's at the training ground at 6 o'clock every morning. He was asked about that later in the press conference, and he sort of said, well, I think I will probably get back to those 6 a.m. starts, but maybe not for the next couple of weeks. But as I say, that was a really common theme of the press conference this morning. How being asked, has this changed your outlook on the way you manage, the way you coach, the way you work with the players, the amount you work? And you certainly did get a sense from Eddie's answers that maybe this has changed his perspective a little bit. I've got no doubt that he's still going to be, crazy about work and, very, very stringent and meticulous. But you did get the sense that maybe he has just thought to himself, look, maybe I do need to take a step back. Maybe I do need to give a little bit of responsibility to the coaches because, look, pneumonia is absolutely nothing to be, it's no joke at all. It's nothing to be messed with. And I'll be honest, I was really, really surprised earlier this week that Eddie Howe came back to training. I suspected or predicted or maybe guessed that he would be out a little bit longer. But I think it's just testament to his will, his determination, his want that he's back so soon. And obviously he will be back because he thinks he's going to be back. He did sort of have a joke with us later in the press conference that he probably wouldn't be running around the training ground or the touchline as much as he has in previous months, but he will definitely still want to be out there day to day. And as I say, he will only be back because he feels like he wants to be or he can be. The next question that was asked to Eddie Howe was sort of about the care he'd received. We all know that he put out that statement early on after his diagnosis when he was in hospital around 2 weeks ago, and he thanked the well wishes of the supporters and also of the NHS. He did that again this morning as we spoke to him, saying, I think the care I received from the NHS was absolutely first class. I just want to say a big thank you to Charlotte Milne and all her staff who look after me. I can't thank them enough. They were absolutely brilliant. Just the care and the love that I felt from them. Eddie Howe did go on later to joke that he felt like maybe there was one Sunderland fan among the sort of nursing team that it was looking after him. He continued, just the well wishes and the text messages that I've received from everyone. I've tried to get around everybody to reply, but it does take a while. I really do appreciate it. I'm really, really thankful. Anyhow, as I say, really, really grateful for the support, and you could tell that there was sort of that really overriding sense of gratitude and thankfulness that when we spoke to him this morning. Now, something that we've really tried to pin Jason Tindall down recently is how much say Howe has had from the sidelines. Jason Tindall has insisted that the contact has been limited or minimal. Maybe some of the more skeptical fans, or maybe even us as the journalists, have thought, can we really imagine Eddie Howe taking himself out of the equation completely and allowing Jason Tindall and his coaching staff to have complete control? Eddie Howe this morning insisting that has been the case. He says that because he wasn't really in a position to even really watch football or be in the moment watching football in the very, very early stages of his recovery, he essentially said to Jason Tindall, look, this is all you now. He was sending messages of congratulations after the wins against Manchester United, and I'm sure there was maybe some constructive criticism or feedback after that Aston Villa defeat. But when he was asked about sort of how much rein he's given to Jason Tindall in the last couple of days, he says that he's had zero involvement. He said, I made a conscious decision when I felt I didn't feel well enough to focus on the football, to just give Jason and all the coaches the full responsibility. For me, you're either all in or all out, and I couldn't contribute. I said to Jason right at the start, it's over to you, and didn't he do well? I thought he was absolutely brilliant with Graham. He means Jones, Simon, Weatherstone, and Stephen Purchase, and all the coaches and all the players. I thought they were magnificent. I was able to watch all of the games, at least the first two. I wasn't really there mentally, but I was really proud and very, very lifted by the performances. It was a very similar experience to the one I had against Brentford in my very first game. Obviously, you missed that due to COVID, and it's not an experience I particularly enjoy, but a big thank you to everybody for what they did. So there we go, Eddie Howe actually just letting Jason Tindall and his coaching staff get on with it. We were also trying to sort of get a sense of Eddie Howe's feelings, as I've touched on already in this episode, and we all know he's a very, very passionate manager. He throws himself into his work, into this job, into this city. And sometimes you get the sense that maybe he doesn't want to really let people in, or let journalists or let fans know what he's really thinking. He's a very reserved character in some ways, even though he's quite outgoing. So we sort of wanted to get a sense of what his feeling was like and his family's feeling was like when he got admitted to hospital, sort of out the blue. And when asked if it was a scary time, he said, it was the respect that I felt really bad, but I didn't know how bad. I'm one of those people, probably like most men, that you sort of go through everything. You don't necessarily then offer yourself to doctors and people because you think, I'll be okay in a couple of days. I'll just fight through it. I'm sort of very much in that mindset that I'll go through anything until you can't. I was very thankful to the Dr. Paul Catterson, Newcastle's club doctor. He acted very quickly, because without that quick intervention, then it could have been a different outcome. I was treated very well in hospital, and thankfully I'm through the worst of it. Now, it was very interesting. He was pressed sort of further on that in the press conference about Paul Catterson's involvement. And he said Catterson, the club medic, actually went to his house rather than Howe going to him. Catterson went to his house and just sort of ran the rule over him and decided that, look, it's probably best that you go to hospital. And thankfully he did. Before the Manchester United game. So big credit also to Paul Catterson there. And I suppose we should probably talk about a little bit of football as well. We can't all talk about Eddie Howe's health. And there was some questions around the injury situation. He was pressed on Sven Botman, who he said has trained all week and looked very good on the grass. Jason Tindall said last week that he could be back in contention for this weekend against Ipswich. And then in typical Howe fashion, you can tell he hasn't lost it. He said very, very briefly that they're hoping Fabian Schär is okay for this weekend's match. We know that he was brought off early as a little bit of a sort of, just to take a little bit of precaution against Villa last week. He was replaced by Emil Kraft in the closing stages. He said he felt something in his hamstring. Hopefully he will be back for Saturday. But look, I think we should probably just end the episode by saying, look, it's very, very good to have Eddie Howe back. Again, I'm surprised how soon he's back. But I must say, looking at him this morning, you didn't look at him and feel worried. You didn't look at him and think, oh, he's rushed back or he's really struggling. He did look absolutely fine. And as we know, he probably wouldn't be back at work if he didn't feel like he could do the job. It would be very, very interesting to see on Saturday how much of the touchline duties he does, or whether he'll be taking his seat on the bench and letting Tindall sort of let loose again off the reins, back to being Mad Dog rather than this composed front man that he has been for the last 3 games. But just very, very positive to see Eddie Howe back in the dugout. Honestly, the 30-minute press conference, the 25 minutes of it was probably dominated by questions of his health. I could have probably done an hour episode on this, just going through every single question. It was a very, very interesting chat. We did run most of those quotes in our live blog this morning. Jump on our website and you can find those there. But yeah, Eddie Howe is back. He's looking very, very well, and hopefully he will be back in the dugout to lead Newcastle to 3 big points against Ipswich this weekend. We will have the match verdict episode for you straight after full time on your podcast provider, so listen to that. And then myself and Andrew will be back on Monday to hopefully talk about a big win. But until then, enjoy your weekend. Let's hope for a big performance on Saturday, and we'll speak to you very, very soon.